Welcome to the latest episode of 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. Also, make sure you subscribe to Off the Floor. We tell you all the time it's the most heat anywhere, but this month we're doing more than that. We're taking suggestions from our subscribers there. We did it for this particular episode. And if we choose your topic, as Eternal and I have today, and we'll get to Eternal Bass in a second, not only do you get the honor of us choosing your topic and totally butchering it, but you also get $25 in Prize Picks promo funds, provided that you're subscribed to us with the code 5. So, and that's FIVE. So check it out, Off the Floor, link right there in the description, $2.99 per month. And then Prize Picks, use the code 5. FIVE. Again, put down your 5. You get 50 to play right away. Prize Picks is the official fantasy sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. You can play up to 6 players together. You can play every sport, NHL, MLB, when NFL and college football come back, college basketball. It's all there. Check it out. Legal in the state of Florida. It's prizepicks.com. And now, today's episode.
Mercy. Luxurious. Heat Nation. Yeah. Mercy and Lago. Down to Biscayne. Yeah. 5 on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Down to Biscayne. Kept the floor playing. Got it all band. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to 5 on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to 5 on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at the 5 Reasons Sports. I got Eternal Bass. You can follow him at Eternal Bass. You can also find him on Off the Floor, and also when we're on there on playback. We will be doing the NBA Finals games on playback. That I know for sure. I'll be joining Eternal on there, as will many from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Today we're going to talk about Niko Jovic. Why don't you go with it? Where is this coming from? This is from our Discord, Off the Floor. This is from Neem, correct? He's a regular on there.
Absolutely a regular. Shout out me. Pod idea is, what is Niko's realistic upside? Along those lines, is he a guy you should pay or use in a trade to upgrade?
Okay, perfect. And you're the guy to bring on for this, because I know that you've been one of the big Niko backers from the beginning. All right, so let's get to exactly what the circumstance is. Niko Jovic was on a rookie contract, was a first-round pick. Of course, just 21 years old. The Heat have been promoting him pretty regularly on their social media, talking about the transformation, his physical transformation, which seems to be going to another level in terms of how much bigger he is, stronger he is than when he first came in. He had an uneven season, largely due to injury and role. Played very well at times, averaged 10.7 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, shot. His splits are good, 46, 37, and 83. Effective field goal percentage of 56. You'll take all that. It's just the consistency. Is the consistency of availability. He's played 46 games each of the past 2 years. He actually started more games in his second season, 38, than he started in this past season. A lot of that was because of the drafting and elevation of Kel'el Ware. He shot the same overall from the field. He slipped from 3 from 40 to 37, but on more attempts. So I don't think that's a huge problem. His free throw shooting got much better. Didn't get to the line a lot. Assists up a little bit, but his minutes were up overall, even though he started fewer games. And his rebounds were slightly down per minute. And again, his points were up, but again, a minute bump. So he had the kind of season that a 21-year-old would have as they were progressing, adjusting to changes in their body, changes in role. The problem is he didn't play enough. He played 46 games. He had the injury, obviously, right before he went to play for his country, Serbia, in the Olympics. That slowed him down there. And now he has more of a full off season. He's talked about playing for the national team again. But the other part of this, Eternal, is, and this is the key part, is before he was a luxury. Now you have to make a decision, because he is due an extension of 3 years, up to 3 years and $30 million. He can sign that as of July 1st. As of now, The Heat have not indicated what they're going to do. There's been some speculation that they will give him the extension, but Pat was not asked about this at his end of year presser because honestly, there were more pressing matters for him to get to. So let's start here before we get to the extension because it plays into it. You've now seen him for 3 years. I know you're a fan of his. What is his realistic upside in the next 3 years? Let's not look at 5, 6 years down the road. Let's look at if you gave him a 3-year extension. What is his realistic upside?
I think I don't know. I think 15, 5, and 5 is realistic, right? I mean, you just read off his stats for this season, which was 10, 4, and 3. You kind of look at what he was doing before he went out with the broken hand, and when the Heat were advertising him and Khalil a lot, when he got into like a good stretch of playing basketball, he was doing something somewhat similar, not 15 points, but he was getting up there to those 12, 13, 5, and 5 kind of things, or 4 and things. I think that going forward is kind of realistic. You look at the defense the defensive evolution he had that second season that you talked about, where we all were noticing how bad he was on defense to start the season and how good he was on defense to end the season, which is what earned him the starting role coming back into training camp. Of course, he had the ankle injury to kind of mess up his progression, but there also were some things that the coaching staff wasn't seeing. I remember Spo talking about that last preseason, though Niko had a great game against the Grizzlies, he kept harping on the rebounding. Like you talked about, the rebounding had came down, which was a consistent issue this season that Spo kept talking about was the rebounding, right? Like they acknowledge that he's a good passer, good facilitator, all of those things, the great parts of Niko's game. But there are certain things that they want to see of him because they expect of him, right? Like Dra just talked about when he sat down with Niko. You know why he's so hard on you, because they expect a certain level out of you. And so I think if you're talking about, what realistic expectations, shout out to Neem, for the next 3 years, I do think 15, 5, and 5 isn't unreasonable.
And I think that's in the ballpark too. I think a lot of it has to do with role.
Right.
And that is something that they need to sort out. But he needs to be available for them to be able to sort it out. That's the thing. And so now you're looking at a team that is bringing Bam back. We believe that. We know that. We believe Ware will be back. I guess if you make a trade for Durant, that's an option. There's also the option of Jovic being included in a trade for Durant. I do know he was offered at the deadline, so he could be offered again. I don't know what Phoenix's thoughts are on him or another team. Again, any team that's going to acquire him knows that likely, that extension is sitting there. So that's something that they would have to consider. I think in a free-flowing offense, which the Heat are not, Niko would have a chance to really flourish. He's one of those, and I've talked. We talk about these guys going away from the Heat, and they're never better after they leave Miami. I mean, Strus is the only one who's kind of held up. Like most of these guys do not hold up in other places. But Jovic is one that would worry me about being better somewhere else. Do you agree with that? Just because the style of play that he's really good in transition. He's better than a lot of the other guys they have. That's for sure. The way he sees the floor, it's sort of he has adjusted to being a spot up 3-point shooter, but that's not his game. I mean, his game is ball in his hands, making plays. And I feel like if he was in a system with more pace, a little bit more freedom, a little less clunky than sometimes Miami looks, that he's one of the ones that would scare me that he'd be better somewhere else. Do you agree with that?
I do agree that he more than likely will thrive somewhere else. If you're talking about somewhere like Indiana, even the Spurs, maybe Phoenix, depending on if they get Chris Quinn out there. Any kind of system that does have more pace and space. Ironically, right, since we're talking about the Miami Heat and the guy that kind of pushed the pace and space even further in Eric Spoelstra. But I do think one of the things with Niko, even with his high points, is he's going to have to tighten up that handle, right? I do think he has to tighten up the handle, and even some of the off the record conversations I've had with him personally, as far as does he still think of himself as a lead initiator, right, in the league. I won't say point guard. All right, Sean, I give you that one. I won't say point guard, but as a lead initiator, is he still working on those guard skills and things like that? And I do think he has to tighten it up because you can have all the division in the world, but like if you're not able to get from part one of that process to what you're seeing, which is attack guys off the dribble, breaking down the defense, which we have seen some, Ethan, but he has to tighten up the handle if that's something he wants to do. But I do think he could thrive in some other places. That would just be a big part of it.
I'm with you on that, and I think that when one of the things you mentioned that is true about him is he's very honest about his own limitations or shortcomings. He doesn't hide from them. He doesn't get defensive. I remember our conversation with him on Media Day where he talked about the different roles that he would play, what was most comfortable for him. He's honest. I do think some of that is a European thing, honestly. A lot of European players I've talked to, Dragic was very much like that. Goran would say things that like, okay, guys who grew up in this country are not going to say that. They're more media trained than that. Goran was just going to say kind of what he felt. I appreciate that. And I think that a lot of what we are saying, he's aware of. He has addressed his shortcomings, and I think he can continue to. And you look at that one game that he came back after the long absence this year. He got them back in that game. Now,
He
yes, he
did.
shot them out of it. He shot
He
them out of
did.
it, but they never would have been in it
Yeah.
if not for where they were. So, if not for his performance in that game,
So
and
also
a
to
lot of it
piggyback
was
off of
being
that,
free flowing. Yes.
to piggyback off of that, right? Like you look at his impact in game two of what we were talking about for those confused against the Cavs. Not only was he impacting on the offensive side, we've seen Nico impact on the defensive side, which is why consistency is constantly a thing with him because he is a potential two-way player. None of us are saying that Nico will be, making all defensive teams. It's not what we're saying, but he can have an impact on defense along with the impact on offense. And I think you saw that absolutely in game two. What you wish you would have seen in game two is what he was doing in their final game in the last game 4, which is his offense had clicked. Like he was literally the only person out there who even had a semblance of an offense. But if you had saw a little bit of that along with what he was doing in game 2, I do think they probably would have been able to pull it out. But there's also the consistency thing there too, Ethan, because he struggled the next game. He didn't have the same type of game in game 2, in game 3, but he had a bounce back in game 4. So I do think as we go on, especially answering the question that Neem is asking, is he the type of player that you keep, or do you use for upgrade? I think we'll get to that.
We're going to do that here. Before we do, I want to mention a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, our friend Lynette. You can find her at insurancebylynette.com. She has suggestions for us on the Discord as well, so we'll definitely take one of hers. 954-581-8800, based in Lauderhill. That's basically northwest Broward, kind of, sort of. You can reach out to her, and she'll service the entire Tri-County area. So you need life insurance, homeowners insurance, renter's insurance, especially car insurance. She can really help you find something if you have a bad driving record. Particular specialty of hers, I can tell you. Insurancebylynette.com. Aggressive insurance agency, also a great person and a huge Miami Heat fan. 954-581-8800. She sponsored our play of the game this year, and a lot of those it was hard for us to come up with. So, Lynette, we apologize for that. Let me ask you a question right now. On the current roster, where would you rank, and then we'll get into what you do now with the extension and keep him or trade him or whatever. Where would you rank Nico in terms of offensive potential on the current roster? And I'm talking about as a full-fledged offensive player. I'm not just talking about points per game. I'm talking about an impact offensive player in a variety of different ways. Helps you on that end of the floor. Where would you rank him in terms of his skill set?
I would say second or third.
Okay, I think it's fair. I have Tyler
because
first.
you guys did. I don't know if it was Alex or Brady or maybe 2 more people that you did a pod with, and that was with Jimmy on the team before things that went to shit. which was talking
And
about
I said I thought he might be the second most skilled offensive player,
yeah.
but that the Jimmy thing. And now that I look back, and I'm like, well, being able to identify mismatches and all that kind of stuff, I probably shortchanged there on Jimmy. But it was the timing of all of that. Tyler is enormously skilled offensively. I don't think even you can't argue against that, right? Like I mean, he's
No,
skilled. Like his
mhm.
skill level is very high. It's the problem is there's physical limitations
Yeah.
that affect the other end of the floor. But I mean, I just think, I mean, in terms of being able to get to his spots,
Mhm.
adjust his game. He's gonna have to do more adjustment now that he's being guarded differently. But I mean, I have to argue that he's the most skilled. I guess the question would be, is Jovic a more skilled offensive player than Andrew Wiggins? Tough, right? I
It's
mean,
tough to say right now because I mean you saw a little bit of what Andrew could do in Minnesota. You saw evolution of
mm,
his in
mm,
Golden
mhm,
State, and
mhm,
I kind of expected a blend of that when he got to Miami. Now, of course, it's a short stretch when you get
mhm,
traded in the middle of the season, and unless you're going into a system that just kind of plugs you in and
mhm.
makes the best of you, it's really hard to kind of excel when you're trading in the middle of the season. But I don't really. That's kind of hard to say right now. It's really kind of hard to say right now. But I think when you think about the pluses for Nico, and you think
Mhm,
about what they were doing in preseason and also to start the season, they were trying to mismatch Hunt with Nico, right? When
mhm,
especially in transition, early half court offense, when they would have a guard on Nico, and they would notice the mismatch, trying to get him the ball. That way, he can also operate in that mid to low post, make some decision as far as quick passes or things like that, or being able to go back up with the score. Um, Not to mention how he can break down the defense.
mhm,
To get into the paint and get 2 feet in the paint and kick out to shooters on the wing and in the corner. Throw lobs. We saw an inbound play with him and Khalil against the Magic that resulted in the lob, in a clutch situation. So, I mean, you've seen different scenarios where he could possibly be effective, considering maybe an uptick in usage and things of that nature. But I do think a lot of that is relying upon first his ball handling being tightened up,
mhm,
and being able to keep the ball away from smaller defenders. Um,
mhm,
we see him use his lead shoulder and things like that, but he's gonna have to get a little bit trickier, not dribble the ball into the ground as Sean says, but
mhm,
be able to get things off in 1 to 2, 3 dribbles. He's also going to need a mid-range game, like Matt talked
mhm,
about in his article. A pull-up, a floater, hook shot, something like that. To kind of throw the defense off. Otherwise, it really kind of puts him in a box of what he can do offensively if it's only three and going for a
mhm,
layup or anything like that. But I do think when you consider his height, his
mhm.
passing, him having a soft touch and being able to shoot, yes, I do think you realistically can look at Nico as having a reasonable high upside offensively.
Right. So to that point, now, if and I agree with you on that. I see a lot of that, and also willingness to get better, as I mentioned.
Oh yeah, he's a hard worker for
Ju-
sure.
yeah, just 21 years old. To me, if the role had been more consistent this year, I don't think the extension would be any question. I think it is in some question now, in part because a lot of this is directional for the Heat.
Mm,
If To me, as much as I like him and I think he can blossom elsewhere, if he ends up becoming the deal breaker in a situation of getting Kevin Durant, even though there's a 15 to 16-year difference in terms of the two of them, and it's Jovic or Ware,
oh, they
I
definitely could
probably
be so. Yeah.
I probably swallow hard and I give them Jovic. I would prefer to keep him, I've said before, even at the end of last season, that I wanted to keep him and that it would have to take a lot to get him. But then they have to be committed to extend him. And I look at, both him and Davion, and I'm like, okay, if you could get both of them for 3 years at 30, and then you're looking at reshaping the roster, you have Bam. We'll see what happens with the Tyler extension, which is the key thing here. If you move Wiggins, I would be comfortable with Jovic and Davion Mitchell both making about $10 million a year over 3 years, considering where the numbers are going to go in terms of the tax lines and everything else as the TV money comes in. So I would be comfortable with that. But a lot of it does depend on what his role is going to be. If he is, coming off the bench is not the problem. Okay, he comes off the even with Davion coming off the bench is not the problem. If they're both going to play big minutes, by the way, I think you can play them together off the bench, and I think then you're getting a defensive and an offensive engine off the bench. And the benches matter. I mean, we've seen this in the postseason. Look what Indiana's bench is doing, right? Like this, the benches matter. So having guys who can offensively and defensively change the game when they come in is critical. So I'm okay with it in that regard. But they got to know how they're going to use him. That's my concern, is that he may end up being a guy that they pay, and then we're kind of having these same conversations in a couple of years. I don't feel like Spo has gotten a handle on him the way he's gotten a handle on some other players. And I also think if you look at him, I know he was hard on Ware at times and yanked him from that last game. I kind of feel like he's harder on Jovic than anybody else in the team. And I know, do you agree with that? And I know Goran spoke to that, but it does feel like he is. And I think part of it is on Niko. And again, I'm not in the practices. I don't, I'm not saying he doesn't work hard, but you don't know how he's absorbing certain information, etc. But I'll let you close on this. I don't think if they're going to pay him, don't they know what they have? Aren't they going to have to know what they're going to do with him? I guess.
Yeah, and I think they do, right? I don't think as a teacher, as a coach, you're pushing someone when you know the well is dry, right? Like you're not trying to like work so hard for something if you know you're not going to get anything out of it. And I think they do see something in Niko just like they see something in Khalil, which is why they're so hard on them, because they see the potential. And I think you just mentioned the role, but I honestly think the injury is what prevents Niko from getting that guaranteed extension this summer, right? And I could make a case for extending both Davion and Niko, because I feel like you're going to get more production out of them than their contract is worth. And I think as you go into this new CBA, can I get more, especially for your role players, not your max players, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or your supposed, are they max, are they not max worthy guys? Can I get the best bang for my buck out of my roster? And I think when you have guys like Davion, like Niko, and like that, Kyle Anderson, whatever, your production has to outweigh more than your contract. And I think at $10 million a piece for both of them, that's probably going to look like a steal by this time next year, honestly. Because I think that if you go into the season and you do get what you expect out of Niko next season, then you're in a world of trouble, because now it's like he may play himself
right
into a position where you like, I gotta pay him way more than I thought I had to. And now that changes the dynamics of your country, of your team. And you look at Indiana, you look at OKC, you look at even Minnesota a little bit outside of the trades. They got guys outperforming their contracts. And that's when you're talking about team building, that's what you want. And even on the upgrade front, if we were talking about 35, 34-year-old Kevin Durant, Niko, I'm sorry, bro, we're gonna have to see you. But honestly, I'm not trading Niko nor Khalil for 36, 37-year-old KD, because it doesn't drastically change where you are as a contender. It doesn't make you a contended team, which is what you would make the KD trade for, right? So now Giannis,
Giannis, everybody goes, but I feel you on it. My lean is to do it. Maybe I'm thinking as a podcast host more than anything else. Maybe it's this Durant obsession that the organization's had for a decade. But don't know. And maybe it's the fact that the East is just a cesspool, and so I'm kind of like, all right, you roll the dice, you see where it is. But would I want to trade Jovic? And where's a whole nother conversation. Depends if you really feel that the where Bam thing can work long term. But do I want to trade Jovic? No. I still think there's potential there. They've invested in him for 3 years. As you said, supposed to put a lot of work into this, and the talent, you see it's there. Okay, I'm not saying he's going to be a lead guy, but as a piece, you see it. And he's so young, and he's just a good kid. Like, and everybody likes him. He works hard. He understands his faults. It's just a shame we're having this conversation about paying him $10 million a year when Terry Rozier is going to get 24. But anyway, it is what it is. Eternal, appreciate it. Eternal Bass. Follow him on Discord. Follow him. I got to go do another show. Always got to do another show. But good stuff from you. Good stuff from Neem. Thank you to everybody who's on Off the Floor. Subscribing keeps us going. But also, you can see we will take your topics. We got nothing else to do. Have a good one, everybody.